My name is Maria, and I want to tell you about something that happened to me that changed everything. I work as a teacher at a small elementary school in my town. My days are busy with kids and lessons and all the stress that comes with helping children learn. I love my job, but it can be hard work. The kids need so much attention and energy, and sometimes I feel like I give everything I have just to make it through the day. But one day, something normal became something I will never forget. This is my story about how a regular day became scary and led me to see things I never thought I would see. What I want to share is very important. The things we choose to do every day matter a lot. The music we hear, the shows we watch, the books we read, the people we spend time with, and how we live can change our lives in big ways. My scary experience showed me that when we do wrong things, it can hurt us forever. This story is not just about what happened to me. It is a warning for everyone. We need to be careful about what we put in our minds and hearts. Most important, we need to follow God with our whole heart and not make mistakes that could lead us away from Him. I never thought something like this could happen to me. I always considered myself a good person. I went to church sometimes. I tried to be kind to others, and I worked hard at my job. But I realize now that I was not living the way God wanted me to live. I was listening to music that had bad messages. I was watching shows that were not good for my soul. I was making choices that seemed small, but were actually leading me away from the right path. It was October 15th, 2020. That day was very hard. The school had many problems, and we did not have enough teachers. 3 teachers had called in sick, and the principal asked me to cover extra classes. I ran from one classroom to another and barely had time to rest. The children were more restless than usual, probably sensing the chaos around them. I had to deal with behavioral problems, help struggling students with their math, and comfort a little girl who was crying because she missed her mum. By lunchtime, I had already felt exhausted, but there were still hours left in the day. The afternoon was even worse. The kindergarten class I was covering had a child who got sick and threw up all over the floor. While cleaning that up, another student had an accident and needed to be changed. Then the fire alarm went off for a drill, and getting 25 small children outside safely and quietly was like trying to herd cats. By the time the school day ended, I was tired in my body and in my heart. When work ended, I felt empty and worn out. My head was pounding and my feet hurt from being on them all day. After my hard day, I planned to eat dinner with my sister Rosa. We picked a small restaurant close by where we could sit and talk. It was a little Mexican place we had been going to since we were kids. Even though I was tired, I did not want to say no. Rosa had been looking forward to this dinner all week, and I knew she needed someone to talk to about problems she was having at work. I thought good food and time with family would help me feel better after such a tough day. Maybe some of my grandmother's favorite dishes would remind me of happier times. As we talked and ate, I started to feel strange pain in my chest. First, I thought it was just stress or maybe the spicy food. The restaurant was warm and crowded, and I wondered if I just needed some fresh air. I tried to ignore it and keep talking, but the pain got worse and sharper. It felt like someone was squeezing my heart with their fist. I felt dizzy and sick. My vision started to get blurry, and I could not focus on what Rosa was saying. I told my sister I did not feel good and needed to go home and rest. She looked worried and offered to drive me, but I said I would be okay. I left the restaurant and walked to my car. The chest pain became so bad I could not stand it. Each step was hard and I could not breathe right. The parking lot seemed to stretch on forever, and my car looked so far away. I fumbled with my keys, dropping them twice before I could get them in the lock. As I opened the car door, the world started spinning around me. Then everything went black. I fell down on the pavement next to my car and could not move or call for help. I heard people around me getting scared. Someone was shouting to call 911. A woman was saying she was a nurse and was checking my pulse. The last thing I remember was the terrible pain and fear that I might die. I thought about my students and wondered who would teach them tomorrow. I thought about Rosa and how scared she must be. When I woke up, I was not in the hospital. I found myself in a dark, cold place. At first, I was confused. I did not know where I was or how I got there. The air was thick and heavy and made me feel scared. It was not like any air I had ever breathed before. It felt dirty and hard to swallow. Fear took hold of me as I looked around, trying to understand where I was. There was no light anywhere, just darkness that seemed to go on forever. I was on a thin, twisting path that seemed to go deeper into darkness. The ground was rough and hard to walk on, covered with sharp rocks that cut through my shoes. The air got hotter with each step I took, and soon I was sweating even though I had been cold just moments before. Dark shapes moved around me, saying mean things and laughing in ways that made my skin crawl. The path had twisted, ugly trees that seemed to reach out and grab me. Their branches looked like skeleton hands, trying to pull me deeper into the darkness. The farther I walked, the hotter it got, and the louder the screaming became. It was a place of total sadness, and every part of me wanted to go back, but I could not find the way I had come. As I saw and heard the horrible things around me, I slowly realized I was in hell. This hit me like a punch in the stomach. This was not just a bad dream or something my mind made up because I was sick. The pain and fear were real, and I was in a place of terrible suffering. The cries of the people in hell were everywhere, making me more scared than I had ever been in my life. I wanted to cover my ears, but the sounds seemed to come from inside my head too. I could see people in pain, twisting and crying. Their faces showed terrible hurt and sadness that went deeper than anything I could imagine. They were stuck in pain that would never end, and they knew it. Each scream was worse than the last. Some people were calling out names of family members. Others were begging for just one drop of water. Some were asking for just one moment of relief from the burning. It felt like the air itself was filled with no hope. Every step I took felt heavier, like the weight of all the suffering people was pushing down on me. The feeling of sadness and regret was so strong it seemed to go into my bones. I could feel the pain of those around me, and it was almost too much. Every person I saw was filled with regret about choices they had made in life. I could somehow sense their thoughts and memories. One man kept crying about how he had hurt his children with his anger. A woman was weeping about lies she had told that destroyed her marriage. The hopelessness was choking me. I knew this was a place where people could not be saved, and suffering would last forever. The sadness was so deep, it tried to swallow me, whole, pulling me into the endless pain around me. In that moment, I understood the true horror of hell. It was not just the physical pain or scary sights, it was the complete lack of hope. This was a place where sadness ruled everything, and knowing that was the most horrible thing of all. There was no comfort, no rest, no end to the agony. Time did not seem to move forward. It was like being stuck in the worst moment of your life forever, with no chance that it would ever get better. As I walked through the terrible place of hell, I saw someone who looked familiar among all the suffering people. A man stood out from the others. His face was easy to recognize, even with all the pain written on it. It was Elvis Presley, the famous singer my grandmother used to love. Even with pain all over his face, I knew it was him right away. My grandmother had pictures of him on her wall and played his music all the time when I was growing up. Seeing such a famous person in this place was shocking and strange. How could someone who brought so much joy to people with his music end up here? Elvis was surrounded by fire that seemed to hit him over and over, causing clear pain. The flames were not like regular fire. They seemed alive, reaching for him, and burning him in ways that regular fire could not. He was crying out, begging for mercy and forgiveness. His voice, which had once been so beautiful that it made people fall in love with his songs, was now broken and desperate. He seemed to be in constant pain, both in his body and in his heart. Through his cries, I could hear Elvis saying he was sorry for his sins. He kept saying over and over that he had led people down the wrong path with his music and the way he lived. He talked about how his songs affected his fans, how they followed his lifestyle and choices, many of which he now saw were harmful. He mentioned specific songs and how they had messages that led people away from God. He spoke about the wild parties, the drugs, the way he treated women, and how his fans copied these behaviors. He seemed desperate for a chance to make things right, but he knew it was too late. Elvis's confessions were heartbreaking. He spoke about knowing that his music and the way he acted had misled people, steering them away from the right path. He admitted to the power he had over people's hearts and minds, and the responsibility he had ignored. His begging for a second chance was filled with real sorrow. He talked about young people who had died because they followed his example with drugs. He mentioned marriages that were broken because people thought love should be like his songs. He cried about how he had used his fame to live however he wanted, instead of being a good example. Hell was a place of unthinkable pain and suffering. The air was thick with the smell of burning flesh and sulfur, making it hard to breathe. It burned my nose and throat with every breath. Everywhere I looked there were souls in pain, their bodies twisting in agony. The fire was never ending, burning their skin and causing endless, terrible pain. But somehow they were never completely destroyed. They just kept burning forever. The ground was hot and sharp, covered with what looked like broken glass and burning coals cutting into my feet as I walked. There were creatures that seemed to enjoy adding to the misery of the people in hell. They were ugly and mean, with red eyes and sharp teeth. They would laugh when people screamed and would poke them with sharp sticks to make the pain worse. The sounds were just as unbearable as the sights. The screams of the suffering echoed without end, bouncing off invisible walls and coming back even louder. It was a place where every sense was attacked, where every moment was filled with horror. The sight of the tortured souls and the sounds of agony combined to create a landscape of pure torment that no words could fully describe. In all this suffering, Elvis stood out. His pain was especially great. He was always moving, trying to escape the fire around him, but there was no relief anywhere he went. The flames followed him like they were alive and hungry for his flesh. He was reaching out, grabbing at the air, as if trying to hold on to something that could save him. Sometimes he would call out to God, sometimes to his mother, sometimes to his fans, begging them to forgive him for leading them astray. Elvis's desperation was heartbreaking. He kept shouting that he was sorry, that he had not meant to lead people away from good. He said he had just wanted to make music and make people happy, but he had not thought about the consequences of his actions. Despite his begging and clear sorrow, there was no escape from the pain. His attempts to be forgiven were met with silence. The fire kept hurting him without stopping. He was trapped in an endless cycle of pain and regret, knowing that his choices in life had brought him to this place and had hurt so many others too. Seeing Elvis in this state made the horror of hell even more real to me. If someone who had brought so much joy to the world could end up here, what did that mean for the rest of us? I realized that fame and talent, and even making people happy, was not enough if we were not living the way God wanted us to live. It did not matter how many people loved your music, or how much money you made, or how famous you were. What mattered was whether you followed God's path or chose your own way. Just when I thought I could not take any more, a bright light suddenly covered me. It was so strong that it made me close my eyes, but unlike the dark heaviness of hell, this light was warm and comforting. It felt like a powerful force was lifting me out of the depths of despair. I felt weightless, as if being pulled away from the pain that had surrounded me. The light was pure and clean, washing away the smell of sulfur and the sound of screaming. For the first time since I had arrived in that horrible place, I felt peace. The next moment I opened my eyes, I saw myself lying on a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and medical equipment. There were tubes in my arms and a mask over, my face helping me breathe. For a moment I was confused, struggling to understand what had happened. My body felt weak, but I was alive. Rosa was sitting in a chair next to my bed, her eyes red from crying. When she saw me wake up, she started crying again, but this time from joy. This experience changed me deeply. The relief and joy of being alive were now mixed with understanding how important every moment and every choice is. I knew I had to share my story to warn others about the dangers of losing their way and to encourage them to live with honesty and faith. Let us be careful about what we allow into our hearts and minds, because these things will shape who we become. Let us seek God with all our heart, not out of fear, but out of love and thankfulness. Through prayer, worship, and reading Scripture, we can deepen our understanding of His will and His grace. In doing so, we strengthen our spirits against the pull of worldly distractions and find true fulfillment in His presence. We need to make God the center of our lives, not just something we think about on Sundays. As believers, let us pay attention to these warnings, mindful of the choices we make, and steady in our commitment to walk in the light of God's truth. In doing so, we honor our second chances, live by the principles of faith and honesty, and light up the world with the love and grace of our Heavenly Father. We have the power to influence others for good, just like others can influence us for bad. Let us use that power wisely. My experience taught me that hell is real, that our choices matter, and that God's love and mercy are also real. I pray that my story will help others avoid the path that leads to destruction and choose instead the path that leads to life. Thank you for listening to my warning. Please take it seriously and share it with others who need to hear it. M.